Guys, look at this. Look closely. Gorgeous, isn't it? Howdy folks, and welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making a brown sugar spice cake. Now this is a delicious, delicious recipe. It's an old recipe. It goes way back, way before me. Okay, this is a family recipe that goes way, way, way back. It is a very specific recipe in how it has to be prepared. And it's kind of fun to make. So I think you're going to have a real good time on this one. You get something delicious and fun. For those of you that are watching the cook-along tutorial, just so you'll know, if this is your first time to watch a Texas Cooking Today video, I do these tutorials. They are very complex. They're somewhat long. You'll notice that. If that's too long for you and you don't want all of the detail on technique, then you might want to watch the short version. That'll be the previous episode to this one, so check that out. And if you have watched and you like my tutorials, thank you very much for watching. On this tutorial today, it's going to be in depth. If you're not strong with baking, this one should help you out considerably. We have a cake that has 14 ingredients, guys. Count them, 14. One of them we're going to use twice. There's a lot to it, a lot of different procedures that have to be followed exactly. Okay, and some cakes are just that way. In order to get the right texture, the right effect, you have to do it the right way. And this is one of those cakes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you all kinds of neat techniques when it comes to baking, and we're going to get in there and make one of the tastiest cakes that you've ever made. Now folks, this is a perfect cake for the holiday season, and everybody should have something wonderful like this to prepare for their kids. So I'll tell you what, let me show you how to make one of the most magnificent tasting spice cakes, and I'm going to also show you how to make a fantastic frosting to go on top of it. Oh, it's good. Come on, let's get one in there. Guys, look at all this. So many things. 14 different ingredients, like I said. Right here. The butter we use twice. Okay? Now, fun recipe, but there's certain rules that you're going to have to obey on this one. In order for this cake to come out right, the flour's got to be sifted twice. Okay? In order for this cake to come out right, you're going to be using eggs, but you're not using all of them. You're using just the yolk. Okay? The whites we will not be using on this. So I'm going to show you how to separate your eggs. I'm going to show you how a chef will separate his eggs. On this one, we're going to be using some orange rind. So I need to show you how to properly, well, zest an orange is what that's called. And that's where we just basically grate the rind. It's not that tough. It's pretty easy to do. We have a lot of stuff here, guys. So I'll tell you what, come a little closer. Let me go over all the ingredients. I'll tell you what all we're going to use and the exact measurements. Oh, and now if you're watching this tutorial, go ahead, break out that pen and paper and get ready to write. We're going to be giving all of the measurements to everything so that you've got a perfect cake to make. All right, come over. So as you see, we have all of this stuff. Now your ingredients by measurement, right here. This is milk, 1 cup of milk, 1 1/2 cups of brown sugar. That's packed, okay? This is 2 1/2 cups of sifted flour. So what I had to do is I had to take some flour and sift it and then remeasure it to get the 2 1/2 cups of sifted flour. My other ingredients, 3 egg yolks, not the whole eggs, guys. Down here you're going to have a 1/2 cup of butter. That's 1 stick. On these leavenings and spices, what you're going to need here, this is 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, 2 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. Your spices, those wonderful flavors, on the cinnamon, 1 teaspoon. 1/2 a teaspoon of cloves, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, 2 teaspoons of grated orange rind. And for our frosting, this isn't as cloyingly sweet as a lot of those buttercreams. Most buttercream frostings will have about 2 cups of sugar to 1 stick of butter, and that's really, really sweet. So this one has 1.5 cups of confectioner's sugar, that's powdered sugar, to 1 cup of butter, that's 1 stick, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Guys, I'm going to say something. I normally don't tout brand names or anything like that, but when it comes to certain products, when it comes to vanilla, if you go and find you a bottle of vanilla from a Hispanic market that is from Mexico, frankly, their vanilla is processed differently than the extracts here in the United States. And I believe it comes out as a much, much better tasting vanilla, much more pure tasting. It tastes more like the natural bean. And so I recommend that if you can find it. Okay, let's get busy cooking up a yummy cake. The first thing that we have to do is we're going to have to sift together some of our ingredients and then cream the butter and get right into making that cake. Okay, if you are new to baking, I thought this would be a great time to teach this lesson. Sometimes when you meet up with a recipe that says sift before measuring, what you need to do is take the amount of flour approximately that you're going to need, just rough measurement, and put it into a sifter. Now your sifter can also be just a strainer. You can use a strainer and bump it with your hand and it will knock the flour through the bottom of it, and that works fine. This is a recipe that's going to require about 2.5 cups of flour, and I've put roughly 3 cups in there. I'm going to sift that through, I'm going to measure it again, and then I will have my flour for use. Sifting is important. Sifting will help remove any lumps from the flour, as well as making it light. Sifting changes the character of the flour so that once you measure it out, it measures in a different way, okay? And it's a good way to stabilize flour so that your cakes come out uniform. I'll tap that once, only once. And this is important, I don't tap it hard. Sometimes you'll get an air pocket down in your measuring cup. And if that happens, your measurement's going to come out off and you're going to have to start over again with it. So I do that just once, it doesn't really compact it, and it allows me a beautiful, beautiful product. That one gentle tap just allows the flour to fall into any large air pockets. Beyond that, it's really not going to settle it much. Now, if you tap it repeatedly, you're going to have issues. Here's the flour I need for my product. And what's left? Well, that's simple. It'll be ready for another day. Okay, guys, we need to get busy combining our flour with our leavenings and salt and spices. Now, when I say leavenings, those are the ingredients, the active ingredients that make the cake rise, okay? And that's that baking soda, which puts out a lot of carbon dioxide when you're cooking with it, especially with acidic foods, because it releases, when it mixes with an acid, a lot of carbon dioxide. Here we have baking powder, and that's a combination of some acids mixed with the baking soda. Now what this does is it allows it to rise twice. Once as you're mixing it, and the next time in the oven, once it hits a certain temperature, it reactivates and starts releasing more carbon dioxide. So that's the way double acting baking powder works. When we need to sift, guys, let me show you something here. This is my old sifter. This is an antique sifter. I use it. It's fun. Okay, but you just put your flour in here, and the little thing in the bottom rotates and pushes the flour through the sieve on the bottom. If you don't have one of these, you can certainly use just a plain old, good old-fashioned strainer. This is a strainer that's works fine. So you can put your flour in this and just tap it with the side of your hand like that, and boom, you are sifting. All right. I'm going to use my trusty old antique sifter. I like that old thing. What I'm going to do is start by placing some of my flour, which, remember, In order to measure this out, I had to pre-sift it. So 1 and about a half. So it's a little over half of my flour. Now on top of that, I'm going to break these up a little bit. I'm going to put my spices, like I said, all my spices and leavenings right in there, because we're going to sift them together. I'm going to drop in the rest of my flour. Guys, let me tell you something. If this sifting process seems silly, really it is not. Some of the finest textured cakes require sifting, okay? And what you're doing is you're breaking the flour loose and making it lighter, basically incorporating air into it, and it affects the texture of what you make. We have a matter of that orange to deal with, this guy right here. We needed a couple of teaspoons of the orange rind. Box graters are great for this, guys. You know, they have that rough side, okay? So you can take your orange and simply go over the outside of the orange. You're not looking for the white part under the orange. You're just looking for the orange part itself. And looky here. There is our orange. Let me sprinkle that up on top here. So we'll just put it down into our cake as we go. Alright guys, we have our orange down in here, all of our spices, our flour is ready to go. What a beautiful setup. And the odor from this bowl alone is just unbelievable. Now let's get into creaming our base. Okay guys, when it comes time to separate egg yolks and whites, this is not something that you need to make difficult, okay? Because it's not a real complicated thing. What I want to do, there's different ways to crack your eggs. You can just do it on a flat surface if you want. Hold the egg vertical as you open it up, okay? Boom. And what this does, that allows for that white to drain off, okay? And then I want to pass the yolk from one side to the other, and more of that white drains off. All right, now I'm going to do that one last time very gently, allowing my white to just kind of drain off the edge before I drop it into the other half. Boom. Okay, there I have separated the two. My yolk goes down there. Let's do another one. We have to start with our butter. Now your temperature on all of your ingredients, guys, really needs to be room temperature. This butter has been sitting out for a couple of hours and it's now room temperature. Don't worry about that butter, guys. It is a fat, and fat is a preservative, so you can have it out for a long time. It's the eggs. It is this part that you don't want to have sitting out too long, okay? Because those eggs, man, that can be a real problem if they're out too long. Now what I need to do is to cream together my sugar and my butter, and then we're going to start working in other ingredients, all right? What we're going to be doing here is starting with the butter and making it light and fluffy. So guys, I want you to take a different view, look down into my bowl over here, and know what we're going to be doing. Now I like doing these tight close-up shots so you can get a good view of exactly what's really going on. One of the things that helped teach me when I was younger about how to properly make these things was to actually see what was happening inside the mixing bowl as it was happening, because things change, okay? The butter is going to become a lighter color. See how yellow it is right now? Look at the color of that butter back here, guys. You can see it's quite yellow. We're going to turn it much lighter, and we're going to be working air into it. So that's called creaming. We'll lock this, we'll turn this on, and let it have at it. Now look right down into the bowl so you get a real good idea. See there how that is just kind of gently moving it around? You can see how soft it was. So here we go. Now we're going to work that air into it. If you don't have a mixer, you can do this with a whisk also. Guys, if you'll look at my timer back here, we're just over a minute. Look at the color change. You see how it has turned a much lighter, almost white color? All right, I'm going to run it again, but you can see the effect is already starting to take. Creaming is important in this process. Something else, when it comes to mixers, and this is pretty much universal, it doesn't matter about brand, the beater doesn't hit the bowl itself. It doesn't actually glide against the bowl. So there's always a certain amount of material that is against the bowl itself that just didn't get worked, okay? So what we do is we occasionally knock it free. There's another important thing to remember. Some of those mixers have a paddle that has an edge that is a scraper edge is what they call it. It's a silicone edge, just like this spatula, and it scrapes the bowl as it goes around, all right? And when it comes to that, you don't have to do this part down below, but sometimes it pushes the material from here way up past the top edge of that beater, and that's when you still have to use one of these to knock it loose. So have your spatula handy. Regardless of the mixer you use, you're going to be needing that. And of course, if you're working this by hand, you got your whisk going, and that's not going to matter either way. Folks, I have done this by hand, and it works, okay? Let's turn this back on and give it another minute. There we go. That was one more minute. Now, what we have to do is we have to cream in our sugar, and I'm not going to throw all of it in there at once. You want to put that in there just a bit at a time. So here's the first half a cup, almost. Just let it go in there. Add a little more. Now, I'm not going to put all of that sugar in. I'm going to let that cream for a minute, and then I'm going to add more of the sugar. So there we are. We're back down about another minute in. I'm going to put the rest of this brown sugar in there. There we go. Now this is where we need to use that spatula again. You remember how I told you you'll get material pushed up on the sides? And look what happened right there. See? So we're going to get that back in there so it gets creamed in with the rest of that. So you can see the different characteristics, the different textures and effects that form as the sugar slowly gets creamed into that mixture. All right, guys, this is the point. As you see, our textures changed a lot, a whole lot. It was like clumpy and pulling apart a little bit ago, and now it has become smooth and creamed together. Beautiful. So it's time. We're going to put those eggs in. Now, if you'll notice, each time I add ingredients, slow it down. One of the biggest mistakes you can make on any mixer, no matter what the brand is throwing ingredients in there when it's running at a high speed, because it's going to throw them back out at you. All right? So slow it down, get the ingredients worked in, and then speed it up. Now guys, as we have the cake mixture being made, I'm going to take my stick of butter and I'm going to rub it all over the pan that I'm going to be using. Now we are using for this a standard loaf pan. This is about 8.5 by 4-inch loaf pan. Okay. And if you'll notice, I'm just rubbing that butter all over it. You don't want to miss any part of the pan, guys. This is a technique called greasing and flouring, okay? And the whole idea here, we don't want the cake to stick to the pan. We want it to release smooth so I can turn it out and put that buttercream frosting all over the outside of it. All right? So we got to get it to release from the pan for that to work. Now guys, just put a little bit of flour in there. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a few tablespoons maybe, and run it all the way around. And slow this down a little. I'm going to have to start working in my flour and my milk. 1 cup at a time, or 1 little scoop at a time, I should say, on my flour. Add that in. And a little milk. And just go back and forth with them, guys, and just let it get worked in. There's no rush on this. You don't have to run it on high speed. We're gently working these together. I want to forewarn you, folks. Don't let your kids lick the beater or the bowl or the spatula or anything else. Remember, you have raw egg in there, and it was mixed with room temperature ingredients. Okay, so you don't need to run any risk like that. All right, guys, as you've seen, we haven't mixed that very long. It was mixed on a low speed. That way we didn't change our textures any, okay? So we have this beautiful, beautiful texture in the bowl. Now look at the shapes that it makes, the stretched, pulled shapes. And that's part of the character of this particular batter. Now, when I was talking to you earlier about, I learned a lot from looking into the bowl. When you learn about those textures like that, you know what you're looking for in your product, in your end product. So this is how we learn. We find out, we see the way it's supposed to be, and then we move towards doing it ourselves. Okay guys, here is that nasty little pan that I fixed up. It's going to do just fine, trust. Alright, my cake mixture right down into it. And what I'm doing is just kind of getting this evened out in my loaf pan. I want I want that mixture to be level across the top. Alright, down in the oven it goes. Alright, there it is in the oven. That's going to be about 40 to 50 minutes, guys, so kind of keep an eye on it. And the way we test a cake to see if it's done, we think that it's about there, we put a toothpick in the top center of it. If that toothpick comes out with any wet batter on it, well, you know it's not done. And if it comes out dry, you know it's ready to come out of the oven. You don't want to overcook it, you don't want to dry it out. So guys, now we just wait, okay? That thing has to cook. Here guys, this is out of the oven and it's had time to cool. And if you'll notice, it kind of went over the edges a little bit. Don't worry about that, because what we have to do is level this off anyway. So what I'm going to do is use a knife and just cut away. There we go, any of that crust on the edge. So what we want to do next, remove all of that top. Now watch what I do with my knife. Nice sharp knife. Right along the top of the pan. This part we're going to discard. Now don't discard it, for heaven's sakes, just enjoy it. Okay? And there is our cake. This is the part we're going to be frosting off, guys. There we go. And I'm ready to turn this out onto the location that I'm going to frost it, and that's going to be onto a plate. Okay, let's go ahead and invert this thing onto this plate. Now, it's not an exact fit, so I've got to be kind of careful here. Just like this. There we go. It's not perfect, it's a little bit torn. But guess what, guys? We're going to be frosting it, so it's not an issue. Don't worry about that, okay? Okay, we have started our butter for that buttercream. Let's get it going and make this stuff. Okay guys, that's been going at it for a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to start working this sugar right down into it. I'm not in a rush with this. We'll just let it do its own thing. We'll speed it back up a little bit. There we go. Just long enough to incorporate the sugar, and then a little more. Now guys, at this time I'm going to go ahead and put my vanilla in there. Okay, now I'm going to scrape down that bowl, and we're going to let it go at it one more time. I don't know if y'all have ever had buttercream before, and if you haven't, well, once you taste this, you're going to be in for a real treat. This frosting is just off the hook delicious good. And there we go, guys. This is ready. I'm just going to scrape down that bowl and get it over on my cake. Okay guys, look at this. So we got a few tears on that outer layer. Remember, it's not a big deal. This little splotch right here, well, that is very simple. That's just part of where we had the butter and flour, and the flour was a bit thick on that spot. Now watch what I have here. That buttercream. Now there's a little bit left in the bowl. I'm not in a rush to get every bit of it. What I want to do is just get a beautiful thin layer of buttercream over the whole thing. And here's the thing. Don't kill yourself here. If you get a little bit on the plate, guess what? That happens, okay? We don't lose sleep over it. Be gentle. You don't want the cake to tear. All right, guys. I'm going to get something that's a little more delicate. then this, very gently. I'm just going to bring it up the sides here. So if you would just gently work yours out the exact same way. And here's the thing, I'm not worried too much about perfection here. I want it to look nice, but it doesn't have to be perfect. A little more buttercream, just enough to finish it off. All right, now that we have it completely covered, we can simply work on smoothing that out a little bit, and it doesn't take a lot of work. Just take that trowel, just take that knife right around it. There we go. And what hits the plate, we're going to clean up in just a little bit, guys. Don't sweat that either. So when you're cleaning up around one of these, well, it doesn't take a genius. You just kind of got to go at it in a sensible way. I like to just use some paper towels to make it as neat as possible around the base. And there we have it, folks. One spice cake, all iced up and ready to go. Well, there it is, guys. Beautiful brown sugar spice cake and a lovely buttercream frosting. I love that stuff. It's so delicious. I know I'm not the world's best at icing a cake. I've never been very good at that. But the flavor of the recipe, man, it's off the hook. So let me turn this here. We're going to get this cut and a piece of it put on plate. There we go. Guys, look at this. Look closely. Gorgeous, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful cake. The structure's flawless. Now that's good. The cake, guys, the cake is velvety soft. It's moist. Spice running through it. It's not overwhelming. It doesn't knock you backward, but it's just flat delicious. This is a really, really good recipe. Fantastic tasting and not that difficult. There's a lot of stuff in it, yes, but guys, come on, give it a shot. You're gonna love this one. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today. Thank you to my subscribers. Guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting on? I have great recipes, wonderful techniques all of the time. So subscribe, let me show you what's coming out next. You're gonna love it. If you would, please click like, leave me a comment down below there. I do appreciate that. And one last thing, guys, if you would, just have a good day. Bye-bye.